Okay, hi everyone. I'm going to get my Instagram going and then we'll get this crushing out Q&A going. Give me 1 second. Wow, I do wish they would just manage this better. Come on. Slow Instagram. Okay, here we are. We're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we are on Facebook. We are here. It is Crushing Out's Q&A. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner. I am excited to be here with you as always to talk about mind-body issues or mind-body symptoms, whatever we want to call it. It's actually called by many different names, but I try to stick to those for reasons that I can talk about as we go. But let's talk about what mind-body issues are, or mind-body symptoms. These are symptoms that are not there for purely medical, physical, or structural reasons. They are there because of what's going on in your brain activity and how it channels into the body. And sometimes people ask me, well, how can you tell the difference? You can tell the difference in lots of different ways. One is if you go to a good medical doctor, they should be able to tell which is which. Unfortunately, there's not as many medical doctors out there that are as good at that as possible, or as should be. A lot of times, what they end up doing is saying, "Well, we're not sure. It could be this. It could be that," and they give you lots of worries because you're not sure. You know, you're not sure what to make of what they're saying. However, if you've been to enough doctors and you're not getting answers, then it tends to be a mind-body issue. Now, let's talk about why I do what I do. Many of you know I got to this through my own suffering. It started with 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. And when I say every day, I mean every second. There was no time that I felt fine. There was a mysterious 2-minute window about maybe 6 or 7 years in where I felt better for a little bit, but I had no idea why. And I just wasn't getting answers. I didn't get answers from medicine very quickly. Within the first 3 months, I got checked out and they had no idea what was going on. And actually worse, I shouldn't even say they had no idea what was going on because they didn't even own it as that at the time. What they said instead was, this is what happens to people. There's wear and tear. The back gets worse. For some people, it happens earlier and then you're just stuck with it, which is not true. None of that is true. But I didn't know that. I went to PTs. They did what they do and were baffled by me, which just threw me off even more. I was like, this is your field. You've never seen anything like this before. These fields they at least used to do this, but unfortunately it's still happening some. They can make us feel like we are an anomaly, that there's something wrong with us. And it's not true. There's something wrong with them in the way that they're seeing it. Fortunately, things are changing. Now, the reason I do this Q&A is that when I was trying to get better, I discovered the works of Dr. John Sarno. And in getting the right information, I found there actually was something I could do. That right information made me think differently. It made me feel differently. It made me start to think about how I could access my brain activity and figure out how to move forward in a way that could change what goes on in my body. Because if you change what goes on in the brain, it changes what goes on in the body. We see this all the time. Crying. You get sad, actual tears roll down your face. Blushing. You get embarrassed, blood flow changes. We know about tension headaches. We know about ulcers. What people seem to not recognize is we know this can go all the way towards shoulder pain, knee pain, back pain, irritable bowel, blurry vision, changes in taste perception, tinnitus, you name it, head to toe. If the body can do it, the mind can use it to change it. So we're going to talk about all of your questions about this, because what I found is the more questions I got answered, the more certain I felt I could get better. And that's why we are here. So when I answer these questions, I'm going to be answering them in my system. There's many ways to get better from a mind-body perspective. It has to be mind-body work. But I developed my system based on what worked for me. And what I found is one important part of my system, which I call the column system, because it's got 3 different columns, 3 different areas that you need to look in to understand what's happening to you at any given moment. What I found is that as I looked at them, they could give me answers about why each thing worked at each time. And I think that's important because in the mind-body field, a lot of times people say, do this, or they say, do that, when really that's a solution for part of the time, for some of the people, or for some of the people part of the time. And we need to know when to do what. So without further ado, let's jump in. I am going to be talking about these 3 columns. They are emotions, doubt, and power. And to make it as simple as possible at the outset, emotions are about what you're feeling and how it alters what goes on in your body. Doubt is about what you're thinking and how it alters what goes on in your body. And power is about your relationship with yourself and however that is in a given moment and how it alters things in your body. So we're going to talk all about it. And I'll kind of outline what these 3 columns are, how to use them, when to use them, etc. So I do see a lot of people have joined. I want to say hi to everybody, but it gets cumbersome to do so. So if you want to say a quick direct hello, please do. Rita says, hi, Dan, Crushing Out Club. Good to see you, Rita. Rita is a great coach in the community who is trained in my system. If you are interested in training with me, do let me know. You can reach me at dan@crushingdoubt.com. We are going to talk about the resources on my website in a little bit, but not yet. I'm going to get to some questions first. Okay, Knox Flammo, we will start with you. Good to see you. Yeah, I had crippling cervical radiculopathy symptoms, but no structural abnormalities. If I hadn't researched, I'd still be in agony. Doctors who aren't mind-body informed are useless, frankly. They can often make us worse. Okay, so I do want to say that really can be true. There are doctors out there who are not only useless, but actually harmful because they're spreading the wrong information. And there's a lot of wrong information happening. What I do think doctors can be most useful for is life and death situations. When we do not know what's going on and we need the highest level of medical care possible, that's where we can go to doctors. But a lot of times they're going to steer us astray otherwise. Fortunately, I do think that many doctors are starting to catch on, and the mind-body field is also growing. So let me talk about that briefly because I was at the ATNS conference. The ATNS is the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. Neuroplastic is another term that just means mind-body. We can use any term we want for it, but it's basically saying the brain causes the changes in the body. And this conference was amazing. It's the second year that I went, and both times I went, I came away feeling like, wow, we are at the beginning of a movement. And you all are part of that movement. And I want to say that our community is part of that movement. And it is a movement to get everybody to understand these things so that things like what Knox Flamma is saying here don't happen to everybody. He had to research it for himself, just like I did. I mean, it was so much work just to get the information. And this is my take on it. But if it's my field, I feel like I owe it to people to know what's going on. And the medical doctors need to hold themselves to a higher standard about that. It's their medical journals who are showing us all of the research that we rely on. You know, the idea that herniated discs actually do not have any correlation to back pain. And yet a lot of doctors keep saying it because that's what they think is true. So the imaging techniques, we see what's there, but we assume things about it. And that's not good science. Not good science to assume. So Knox Flamma, kudos to you for researching, but I have a lot of empathy for you that you had to do that. And because it can be terrifying to do that. A lot of people don't even know that they could do that or that there's anything out there. There are millions and millions of people, actually 1.5 billion pain sufferers in the world. And that's just the people who report it. And that's just pain, not other symptoms. So we got a lot of work to do, but we've got a growing field and movement to do it together. So, yeah, they can make things worse. In fact, there was a study by a guy named Richard Deo that showed that when people saw or got their results from MRIs, they got worse, typically, because they were hearing about problems in the body. And then the brain believed there were problems, and then the body acted just like that. Okay, next one, I did have one thing to say as well. Had them all, neck, knee, back, leg, etc. A lot of people have these kind of experiences where they just have so many symptoms because if we don't know their mind body, they can just jump from any area, one thing to the next, and they can build. When we know, this is where this work is so important. When we know what's going on, we have the right information, it can change everything. Thank you for sharing, Knox Flamma, and let me know if you have any more to say about that. Okay, Hillel says, an argument with my father, not too serious, but it triggered immense rage in me. I went to my room to distract myself with a game, then suddenly painful diarrhea. This is an experience many people have had, very common in mind-body experience. Last week, out with friends, after a loud and unpleasant argument with one of them, boom, a frightening diarrhea attack. I hadn't had one like that in years. In both cases, doubt about food could justify it, yet it feels emotionally driven. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. Not to feel the rage, frustration, weakness. and other emotions tied to what happened with my father, which was more of a trigger than a real problem in itself. So let me weigh in on this, Hillel. I want to say this for everybody, though. When I give my answers, that's just my first answer. This is a conversation. Mind body work is a conversation. Sometimes it's a conversation with me. Sometimes it's a conversation with another practitioner. Sometimes it's a conversation. Well, it's always a conversation with yourself where you're trying to figure out what's happening. Because if we can change our understanding, we can change everything that goes on in the body. So a couple things that you would need to do about this, Hillel, or at least some recommendations. This is an emotions column experience. So I talk about in my column system that emotions column experience happens with onsets and upticks in symptoms. Onsets meaning there was no symptom before, now suddenly there is. That's an onset. An uptick is, no, the symptom was always there, but it suddenly got really worse. Well, this is an onset that you're talking about. Bowel issues are almost always onsets. We do not usually exist in a state where we have elevated symptoms and then it gets worse. Usually you're basically fine and then suddenly you're not. So that's an emotions column event. The doubt column, I wouldn't be looking at so much here. You did a nice job thinking about doubt. You said in both cases, doubt about food could justify it, yet it feels emotionally driven. I would say you did a little bit of doubt column work to just push past that doubt. And that doesn't seem likely. One of the reasons it doesn't seem likely is that it came on all of a sudden. Now, of course, you could say, well, food could bring it on all of a sudden. But I've had vast experience with this, both personally and professionally. And I have found that in these situations, it is pretty much uniformly, especially when it's, diarrhea or something like that. It's pretty uniformly emotional. You can have reasons that you need to go to the bathroom that are not very emotionally driven, like you just ate a lot of food or something like that. But when it's not feeling well, that tends to be emotional. So here's what you need to do. First of all, push past that doubt, which you've already done. Then there are two things that you can do in the emotions column. One is to get more specific. A lot of times people think, well, I know that I was upset. I was upset about the argument with my father. But I want to encourage you, there are specifics to that. Why were you upset specifically? Obviously, not fun to have an argument with your father, and you even know a lot of the specifics. And yet you don't know all of them, because if you did, it would give you a very strong chance of mitigating this acute symptom. So what I would want you to do is to get more specific. Why? And it could be because I want to say something back and I feel silenced. Or it could be because I'm making these up, hello, but I do know a little bit about the situation, of course, or I guess a lot, but that doesn't mean these things are true. I'm only giving them as examples. Here's another one. Maybe you felt very dismissed and felt that he's very arrogant about his take on things and just doesn't pay you any attention or isn't showing you any respect. Those are more specific ideas about emotion. Now, that can alleviate a lot of things, especially pain kind of things, but any symptom. If you're having blurred vision or you're having tinnitus or you're having itchiness or a rash, think about the specifics. If you get more specific, you'll have more ability to control the acute symptom. That's one. The other, I would say, is a power column intervention. The power column is about your relationship with yourself. And I call the emotions and power columns the emotional columns. They're both emotional in nature. The emotions column is to discover, to become aware of emotions. And that alone can often take away the symptoms. But sometimes it's bigger. And sometimes you need to make an adjustment. To make an emotional adjustment, you need to think about power. This is my I can't believe I was going to say this. This is my gut instinct about this symptom. That's pretty hilarious. Though not the symptom, but the fact that I had that pun. My gut instinct is this is a power issue. You are butting heads with your father in a way where you don't want to have to hold in what you're having to say. And we've talked about this. A lot of times you have felt, I must hold everything in. Actually, I think it's the opposite. I think it's time to just start letting everything out. I have a rule of thumb in power, which is I have everything that I think and feel on the tip of my tongue. If you need me to tell you what I really think, I will. And Hillel, I think when you get to that place, I think you actually would say whatever you need to say to your father at this situation. So the awareness piece, you could dig deeper, but my instinct is let's go for the power side of things and make an adjustment so that you just don't have to take it. You went to your room to play the game, but you just kind of took it. And I don't mean that critically. I mean it supportively. It's time to say something, I think. But we need to talk about that because, of course, you're the one who gets to decide. Okay? All right. Susan said, Dan, I needed to hear everything you said. All the nocebos from the medical community and society. You know you've helped me overcome all that doubt. Now I have level 3 doubt, I think. Okay. Susan, I'm so glad that helps. Let's just make a note of what these, she says level 3 doubt. So for anybody who doesn't know, I divide doubt. One of the ways I talk about things is to divide doubt into 3 levels. Level 1 doubt is doubt as to whether it's mind body or whether it's structural, medical, purely physical, whatever we want to call it. And those doubts tend to be the most difficult levels of doubt. They're the ones that cause the most symptoms. But once you're past that, which that's what Susan's talking about, in the medical community, nocebos are things that they said that cause symptoms because of just what they said. And Susan, we've gotten you past a lot of those. Level 2 doubt is, I know it's mind body, but maybe my mind body symptoms harder to master. There's certain symptoms that tend to lend themselves to this more than others, just because of the way people think about the issues, or the way it's talked about in society. You know, they'll say, "Oh, that one's a really hard one to get past." Well, that can lead to level 2 doubt. Once we move past that is level 3 doubt, which is I know it's mind body. I know my symptoms not harder to resolve than others, but I'm not sure I can do it. Or maybe there's something wrong with me that's going to get in the way. And Susan, yes, I think that's happening. Not only is it happening for you, but we can even pinpoint where. So Susan is one of my group members. I'm going to talk a little bit about group for a second. You can join my groups on my website, www.crushingdoubt.com. But the groups are designed to give you a very cost-effective way to interact with me multiple times a week. The group sessions run on Mondays from 1 to 3 p.m. Eastern, Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern. And I set them up that way because I wanted there to be times all over the world where people could access me. And it's just $100 a month to come to all of those meetings, all 3 in 1 week. You know, that's and they're actually like over 2 hours long each. So we're talking over 24 hours of support from me each month. Meanwhile, there's a community where you can write questions to me and I answer them in written form. A lot of great value there to get answers. And the best thing about the groups I find is that they're somewhat similar to this Q&A because you guys ask me questions, I give answers, but it moves much faster through problems. We can pinpoint things much faster. Why? Because we're on a Zoom call together. These are recorded, so you can watch them again, but I can say, wait, what did you mean by that? You can say, wait, what did you mean by that? And we can pinpoint where we're going much faster. So Susan and I are working on a particular part of the columns flow. And I talk about this in group a lot. There's a flow to the columns. Usually you've got to bring down doubt, then you learn about emotions, and then everything flows into power. Well, Susan and I had to work on doubt for a long time. And I'm not a super, super long time, Susan, but I think it just there was a lot of doubt. I mean, doubt is everywhere in society, and people tend to have a lot of it. Once we got that down, we've started to look into emotions. And this is where Susan's at. She's going to flow into power a little bit later. But first, she's at the stage where now she gets to learn about the emotions. When doubt is in the picture, we can't see much of anything. Very hard to see what's going on. And when it's brought down, we can start to see things. So, Susan, you are beginning to see lots of emotional things. I think your number one level 3 doubt right now is, can I handle these emotions? Is this the right thing? Is there something wrong with me or my setup or what I've experienced that's going to prevent me from getting there? Can I tolerate this? All that. And the answer is yes, you can do it all. We're going to work on it. So if you have any questions about group, you can always email me, dan@crushingdoubt.com. The group is a great way to learn about it. My book is another great way to learn about these things. It's the most comprehensive resource, I think, in the mind-body field because it covers what all the different mind-body practitioners say about what and why they fit into the whole thing. That is available on Amazon. It's a book called Crushing Doubt, similar to this podcast. All right, let's get back to questions. We'll go from there, but I'm really glad that helped Susan. All right, Soaring High says, increasing pain with exercise and gets worse and worse and doesn't go away. How to know if to go to a doctor to figure out of a new injury or right away assume TMS. So TMS is tension myositis syndrome, which is what Dr. Sarno called mind-body issues. I use all these terms interchangeably, but I like to note that when people make reference to them. So here's a great example of if we were in group, we could get a lot farther faster because I could say, wait a minute, okay, tell me, are these totally new symptoms? Do they feel different than the other ones? Or are you somebody who's just having a lot of symptoms ramping up all over the place? So this is likely to be that all over again. Have you been checked out by doctors before? There's lots of questions that I would ask that just could make it an even more precise answer, but I'm going to give you my best answer going, forward right now with what I know. So usually it is almost always the case that increasing pain with exercise that's just ramping up more and more. If there hasn't been a very clear and violent injury, then the chances that this is mind-body are astronomically high. Now, you can go to a doctor to get it checked out, but if you're going to go to a doctor to get it checked out, I would do a couple things. One, go in with what I call your doubt armor on, meaning there are going to be times where doctors are going to tell you things like they might say, well, that's just aging and you're getting worse with time. You guys have to learn to tune that stuff out. That's wrong. We need to know what we can trust doctors on versus not. At the same time, if something feels like a medical emergency or there's any danger to your overall health, then definitely go to a doctor. What you're saying, though, doesn't sound like that because it's coming from increasing pain with exercise. Unless it's chest pain while you're exercising, I don't see any reason why you can't assume this is mind-body. But if you haven't been to a doctor in a while, I'd go and just take it with a grain of salt. Even better, if you really, really want a very specific answer, you can go to a mind-body trained doctor. And there are increasing numbers of these great doctors in the field. And if you want to contact me and let me know where you're located, I can let you know who's the nearest one to go to. But typically speaking, well over 99.99999% of all my physical experience is mind-body. So unless you're in any kind of worry that you're in real danger of something that's life or death or that could alter your physical life for the rest of your life, you can pretty much assume it's mind-body. Let's go from there and see what you think. Okay. Jamie says, hi, Dan and my Crushing Doubt family. Love that sentiment. We're a close bunch. And I do want to add, this community has something particular to offer to that movement, to the mind-body movement, which is we've got to help them see how important doubt is. Each one of the practitioners in this field has different insights that we can share with the larger group that can help. This group here that knows how important doubt is, or the columns, or however we want to think about it, power is another example. We can, if you talk about that with people in the mind-body community, that helps because it makes them think about what's going on and factor it into how they're thinking. Okay. Jamie said, earlier today, my boss and a manager spoke to me in a way that made me angry. I was defending myself on correcting a coworker breaking a procedure, but I was not able to express my anger, so I repressed it, and it broke out in a skyrocket of my dizziness. This is reminding me of what we were just talking about with Hillel. When you guys have to suppress what's going on inside, and I'm not saying, by the way, we should just talk openly all the time. There are times where we can't, but it can make us really angry to be bottled up like that. And sometimes we can't bottle it up. We end up going to the bathroom. Or sometimes we can't bottle it up in a way where there's a skyrocket of dizziness. So, Jamie, I think one way of thinking about it is from an emotions column experience, because this was an onset or an uptick, actually, is a better way of describing it, because I know you often have some dizziness. It's an emotions column that's expressing what happens with your anger. I would say when dizziness goes up, you should think about what am I angry about? It's a very Sarno kind of idea, because he often talked about how rage was the key. Jamie said, I know I'm in the emotions column and it's anger, but I didn't get the exact information correct because the symptom remained high. Your thoughts, please, on how do I deal with this situation? Thanks. Okay, now I want to say one particular thing that can help here. It could be that you didn't get the exact information right, and that's probably true. But it also may be the case that your doubt is still too high. And if your doubt is too high, then even when you get the right emotional information, it's not going to break through because you're thinking about it as maybe I'm just stuck in this dizzy pattern. However, I just talked to you the other day and I know where you're at. And it doesn't seem like it is a doubt thing. I think you're right. I think this is about not getting the specific information. So let me give this tip for everybody. Each column has specific work that I recommend. And in the emotions column, the specific work is to develop what I call an emotional themes menu. What this is a list of things that really, really make you mad in life. It's not a list of emotions. It's a list of the kind of emotional experiences that make you really mad. Gaslighting, being disrespected, having people not take you seriously. I mean, we could go on for days with possible emotional themes. But if you made a list of just the things that really piss you off the most, and I then help people hone this. This is actually one thing we were doing in group, which is in a way is super fun, is to go through and hone these different themes and help people see what they are specifically. Because what happens is when you get it well honed, it's like you got a menu. And when you're having a symptom, you can look down and be like, what's happening here? Oh, not respected because, I mean, this could be a theme. Not respected because I'm a woman. That could be a theme. It could be, this is reminding me of, my parents trying to control me. It could be an echo of, I'm betraying. I'm not saying any of this is true, Jamie, and certainly not in any kind of judgment, but you could be thinking, I'm suppressing myself. I'm betraying myself by not saying something. So we got to get at the specific emotion. You're on to the right track of what to be thinking about here. So let's look for what that specific emotion was, and we'll see what we can do. Okay? All right, let's keep going. I got to speed this up because I'm behind schedule in getting my questions answered, and that's on me. So let me get moving. Okay, Noxlama says, if you've been checked out and they can't find anything, but every time you work out, it gets worse. Sounds like predictive coding, a conditioned response, or as I call it, a doubt trigger. Any three of those terms, predictive coding, which is just your brain predicting things, conditioned response is the expectations, and a doubt trigger is what you're thinking about in doing the exercise makes you worried. Yes, I think that's 100% right. Sounds like a doubt trigger to me. Knox Flamma then said, I've asked multiple doctors how much education they get in chronic pain versus acute pain, and it's wildly little. Oh, it's got to be just a ridiculous amount. So many of it is about acute. Doctors have I think in some ways, and listen, some of this is not their fault. I think there's been a lot of problems in society, all pushing in the direction of like emergent care. So they're just always responding to acute situations. Whereas the chronic ones, they just wish somebody else could take care of it. And then the funny thing is, there are people who can take care of it. Me and people like me. And yet they don't learn about us so much. So we really have to bridge the information gap between these providers and what we know. All right, jumping back to YouTube with some questions. By the way, if I miss a question, please just ask it again because I'm flying through this in a blur. Okay. All right, Hillel says, more proof that it is emotional is that as soon as the IBS flare-up appeared, all the intense negative feelings disappeared. Yes, I mean, how can that be? It's impossible for that to happen without them being linked. Great observation, Hillel. And this is an example of how we talk to ourselves. Self-talk is key in mind-body experience. We've got to walk ourselves through these things, bring down the doubt, show ourselves why these things make sense, and just keep talking to ourselves. And when we can't let ourselves believe things that don't make a lot of sense. If the feelings went away when the physical symptom appeared, we need to be good scientists with ourselves. That doesn't make sense unless it's mind-body. Good work, hello. Russell Crane's Music says, hi, Dan and CD community. I am going through a difficult time in my relationship, and we've taken some space for the week. Sorry to hear that, Russell. I know that can be tough. I'm having really intense physical tics. Can I reduce these, even though I'm going through a very difficult moment? Okay. I love all the questions, but Each one highlights a particular thing that helps me orient you guys to important things. So, yes, the short answer is yes, you can reduce these even though you're going through a difficult moment. The key is that in mind body experience, especially around emotional stuff, it's really not so much about what's happening. It's about how we process what's happening and how we feel we can sit with what's happening. So it's not so much about what's happening, it's about what you feel about what's happening. So this is similar to what I was saying to Jamie. We need to get more specific. Actually, she said it to me, and I agree with her. We need to get more specific about what bothers you about this. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that dismissively. I get why this could be bothersome. Of course, anybody would be bothered by it, but each person could be bothered by it in different ways. And so I want to take a look at why. I'm going to give you some examples, Russell. These really may or may not apply at all, but they give you a flavor for what I'm looking for. One thing could be maybe, again, totally making this up, doesn't necessarily apply to you. Could be that a person in your position has never done well with being alone and you feel really, really alone. Maybe it could be about loss. Maybe it could be about rage about something that your significant other's not seeing. Maybe it could feel about not being seen. This is where an emotional themes menu would come in really handy. A really well-honed one is you could look down and see, does any of these cover it? Very frequently when I work with people on emotional themes menus and we're looking for the emotional state that caused the symptom, we can go down that checklist and we'll come up with the same thing. We'll be like, no, 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 no. Oh, yeah. Whoop, this one was here. No, no, no. Oh, wait, hold on, this one. And it's really interesting how accurate it is, but we need that list to be able to do it. So you can get through this difficult moment. You can reduce those symptoms. I mean, you'll get through the difficult moment either way, but reducing the symptoms, yes, I think let's figure out what specifically is bothering you. Meanwhile, we also need to do a little bit of doubt work. Doubt's creeping in here a little bit. It's making you feel like maybe there's nothing you can do because you're in a difficult moment. Doubt will use anything and everything against you to try to fool you into thinking there's nothing you can do or you're stuck. It's never true. Doubt is always full of shit. It's a pathological liar. Okay. Sarah Rudo, good to see you here. What if you had a surgery and one side feels good and the other you now have nerve and groin pain in the surgery spot, and they are saying the tissue might need to be cleaned up, sutures taken out, and nerves removed, but that could also make things worse, and your doctor, who is a TMS doctor, says you're a mixed case. Ran 7 miles the day before surgery, barely had pain on this side, and now hard to sit even. Improved a little with time, but I'm 4 months out, and they now chalk up the symptoms to nerve damage. And I don't know. I want to pull out the nerve. My TMS doctor is unsure what to do. Okay, so Sarah, we could consult on the side a little bit about this if we need to talk more. But it's interesting. Sometimes it depends on who is the TMS doctor, because I know some of them, and I know kind of how they think about things. So something that could be good to talk about. I will tell you this, though, as a general way of thinking about it. As you know, I'm not a medical doctor. Follow the medical doctor's advice for anything that seems life or death or about functionality, and at the same time, we have to remember, even these medical doctors and even mind-body doctors can have their own doubt. So what I would say is, to me, this is not adding up to anything other than mind-body. It doesn't seem likely that it would go in this direction. And if you're seeing anything that in the way the symptoms are presenting that's not consistent, that's all the more evidence. If things come and go, it's mind-body. I mean, if it's always there and always was since the surgery, that still doesn't mean it's not mind-body, but that's a much stronger argument that maybe there's something that needs to be done medically. I will say this. I don't actually really believe in mixed case ideas. I actually think that's a very confusing term that just brings on huge amounts of doubt. I wouldn't consider you to be a mixed case. I think you're a mind-body case. Now, we need to talk more about it, because I'm giving this without any context. And I need to know, well, what's the context? Who's the doctor? What's been said? What have you tried? What are the symptoms? Do they come and go? All that stuff. That's where group, again, is great. I'd be able to ask all those questions, and I'd have a more specific idea to be able to tell you. I'm giving you the bird's eye view of it, but let's connect if we need to on the deeper stuff to figure it out. I don't think, though, that typically speaking, pulling out the nerve, usually that'll just make you not have a nerve, and you could feel numb in that area where the nerve's been removed and things like that. And it's not worth it, because I think better to assume this is mind body and work at it. Mind body work can't harm anybody unless they just don't go to a doctor when they have a medical issue, which that's not what this is. If your doctor was actually concerned about you medically, then I would say, okay, go into the doctor and get it checked out. But when I hear mixed case, I know what that means is that they don't entirely know, and you're not in any kind of danger, because danger is not a mixed case. That's a medical case. I think mixed case is what usually happens when people just, they aren't sure and they're bringing their uncertainty to you. That's doubt. So I think this is all mind body, but we need to work on it. Okay. Let me know what you think, Sarah. All right. Jumping back to YouTube. Warren Henson, good to see you here. Hi, Dan. I went on a vigorous hike yesterday and trail, ran for about 15 minutes. I developed hip pain after the run, and 24 hours later, it's still bothering me. Even if I strain my hip, it should be better. Totally agree with that. Hold on. Let me see, Warren. Did you say anything else about this? So yes, Warren, this is a mind body experience. We've got doubt on the ropes. So Warren's somebody I've been working with for a while as well. And we've got doubt really on the ropes. And it's just trying to find a new foothold. And that's what doubt does. So I would dismiss this as much as you can as that's just another mind body symptom. I'm going to ignore it. It's just going to go away. The only reason it has lingered is that you have historically been a very strong doubter, and it's trying to knock you backwards. I can guarantee you there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, when you say vigorous hike, injuries don't happen on a vigorous hike. Injuries happen from violent movements. You just don't get injured from vigorous hikes. The body has gone through years of evolution to be able to do much more than vigorous hikes. You are absolutely fine. Obviously, if you need to, you can talk to Charlie Merrill, your wonderful PT and one of the best PTs in the mind body field. But I'm not worried about this at all. Now, as always, I say it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think, because what you think is that's what's going to get channeled into the body. But Warren, I think you know enough to know this is doubt whispering to you, and its strongest arguments are when symptoms go up. But I want you to take a step forward here, pun intended, and tell doubt that even when it makes symptoms, you're not listening to it, because it's just a doubt symptom. And I know it's a doubt symptom, by the way, because it corresponded to the actual exercise, not to some emotional event like I was talking about with Hillel or Jamie. So these are doubt triggers, and the better you get at being like, absolutely not, the better off you'll be. Here's what I do with symptoms that get elevated, even though they're doubt symptoms. Either I reject them, assume they're going to go away, and they do go away, or if they do persist, I start to take on this persona with them. Yeah, they never last more than a couple days. 3 days at most, that doubt symptoms should last, because there was some kind of flare up. And actually, it's often less than that. But start working on that as a doubt column symptom, okay? You're doing great work, Warren. I know this is hard, but you're going to get better and better at this and not be vulnerable to these things. At the same time, it's the human condition to have mind-body experience. I have symptoms too. I'm just very, very good at managing them. I can control acute symptoms very well, and I have nothing chronic. I only call it seemingly chronic, in fact, for that reason. Okay? Keep up the good work. All right. Catherine Toomer says, hi, Dr. Dan. I've had a huge onset of fatigue, weakness most of each day. This started after having oral surgery to remove my last 4 teeth in preparation for implants and dentures. I have had enough nutrition, but no solids in over a month so far. In addition, I just got glucose monitored to help manage prediabetes. It reveals that my insulin resistance is pretty big. It limits my eating much more. My symptoms feel like hypoglycemia, but they are not. I think they are largely mind-body, because I have always overly counted on food availability to feel okay. So there. I have begun to do journal speak to work on my emotions. That's emotions, thoughts, etc. that are the culprits. Journal speak, by the way, is Nicole Sachs's version of journaling. And I actually don't know. I need to investigate it more to really understand fully what it is. It's so interesting in the mind-body field how we know each other, but we don't know each other's work as well as we probably should. But okay, so you've been working on journal speak. I'm being thrown right back into the power column needs that I seem to carry. I think it is very, very hard, and I think I am growing. All right, now I love that. Thank you for letting me express myself. Don't I sound on the right track? This stuff takes bravery. Any additional thoughts? As always, thank you, Dr. Dan. Okay. So, Catherine, yes, you're totally on the right track. I would add, within the emotions column, I would say, I think you're having a lot of feelings about aging, moving forward with life, loss. I mean, you had your last 4 teeth taken out for implants and dentures. That's a loaded experience. I can imagine. Anything that I've had even remotely like that has been a big event. So think of this as an emotional flare up as well. And then, yes, I think you're doing a very good job not letting doubt come in and bother you and doing the power work that's behind it. Just don't miss that bridge experience of what is the emotion. Because I think if you pinpoint what that is, you can get this reduced even more, which will bring down doubt even more and then allow you to flow right into power. But honestly, I hate the word honestly. I'm always honest. I don't know why I said that. Anyways, in power column work, what you want to do is align with yourself in the moment you're in. Find out from the emotions column, what moment am I in? And then find a way to feel as good about who you are right now as you can. But you are totally on the right track. And yes, it takes a lot of bravery, and I applaud you, and I'm honored to be here with you. Okay, Nox Flamma says, taking notes, Dan. Awesome. I'm glad I'm saying things that are worthy of note-taking. Shelby Geyer, good to see you here. Thanks for saying hi. Shelby says, I have nothing to say. I know, Dan, you're doubting right now. Ha. So, yes, you are having doubts, Shelby, as is always the case, or often the case, but especially the case recently. So come see me in group. I will help you. All right. And you actually would have something to say if you weren't in a fear free fall at the moment. Let me talk a little bit about the forms of doubt as it relates to this. There are 4 forms of doubt: fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and unanswered questions. And I give them in that order because fear is the form of doubt that's the most difficult, the most invasive. And we want to bring people out of fear and at least get them to just confusion. Confusion is no fun, but at least your thoughts and your mental experience isn't paralyzed by fear. Confusion then allows us to work on what are you confused about and get the confusion down. Once that happens, you move out of the negative side of doubt. Fear and confusion, I call the negative side of doubt. Lack of certainty and unanswered questions, I call the positive side of doubt. When you're working in the positive side of doubt, now you can ask questions and explore in ways where you can make gains. Shelby, you're in the negative side of doubt right now, and that's often the case for you, but not always. When you're feeling better, you're in the positive side of doubt, and that's what we need to work towards. All right? All right. Up next, Hillel says, this is follow-up, I believe. The things he, meaning his father, asked for, which led to the argument, were legitimate. The problem was that I immediately felt the familiar sense of danger with him rise to extreme levels. I read him like an open book, seeing all the anger he hides that could snap out at me in a second. I feel helpless because I depend on him in so many ways. It's complicated, but I'll keep searching the specifics. Oh, it's bad. It's really bad. I'm figuring stuff out. Oh, okay. So maybe you're figuring stuff out even as you think about it right now. Still have more to figure out here, but it connects to the immense sense of danger I've lived with because of him since childhood. Yep, here we go. We're getting into the details. It's crazy how much smarter the body is than us. Yes, I often say that the body is my most intelligent part. I mean, I'm smart, but my body is me, and it reflects brilliant, to the point, precise thinking. By the way, I think rage is the body's way of coping with a sense of helplessness. I agree with that, but I also think there's just a lot of rage. Sometimes helplessness is a way of, or sadness or depression or other things are ways of coping with rage. So we need to look at both, and sometimes it's even both happening at the same time. So I think we need to look at both sides. When you are feeling rage, it could be covering over sadness or helplessness. There's an expression in psychology, mad covers sad, and that can sometimes be true. But one of the strengths of my system is I don't rely on any one thing to always be the case. I say, here's a way of looking at it, and we look until it feels like it feels just right. You'll know when it feels just right, but you're getting there. This is great thinking, and look how we got here. He presented to me what the symptom was. We looked at it through a columns lens. It led us straight to the emotions column. I told him, look for more specifics in the emotions column because that's what we would do there. He did it. He found more information. Now that's going to be relieving to the symptoms, but it also helps with next steps. Okay. Great job, Hillel. Keep it up. All right, Haley. Doubt is my biggest thing with the fear. Doubt is just a very, very powerful thing. People they don't even realize it when I talk to them about doubt, even in my groups sometimes, and I don't mean that critically of anybody, but it sometimes can be hard to recognize just how important this is. I have the column system with 3 different ideas, but there's a reason it's called crushing doubt. Doubt is about whether we understand the whole thing, the whole picture, and it's just huge. Okay, Warren says, thanks, Dan. By the way, I had no hip pain on the hike. Another piece of evidence. I mean, if you had no hip pain on the hike, you didn't injure yourself on that hike. It's just doubt was like, oh, I got an opportunity here. As we sometimes say in group, doubt can be a real a-hole. All right. We'll get it. I think you're well on your way. I think you're probably even going to start getting better after this, just having talked about it. Okay, Healing with Haley says that maybe the same Haley. So good to see you on both sites. It is the same Haley. I see the same picture. Haley says, I'm looking forward to your audiobook so I can understand the columns. Okay, now I've recorded the introduction and the first 2 chapters. I'm working on chapter 3 tomorrow as well as early next week. So I'm hoping to have it to you in a couple months. I will work as fast as I can for that. We've got our systems down. All right. Healing with Haley says, I've had the ulnar nerve transpositions and I've had revisions. I've regretted them all, but I can't change it now. I haven't even been able to sleep in bed for a decade. Oh, God. This is one of the reasons why I feel like this work is so important. You guys are really, really suffering, and I know. But we can get you relief. And it doesn't matter how long you've been suffering. It doesn't even matter how bad the symptoms are. It matters because it sucks, but it doesn't matter for your recovery. We can get you there. It also doesn't matter if you've had procedures. Typically speaking, not going to matter because the mind-body process overrides everything. So let's work at it. And I will work on getting you that audiobook. In the meantime, Haley, I don't want you to have to wait. If you want to come to group and just talk to me about it, I can walk you through it pretty quickly. I've gotten very good at simplifying what are these columns and how can you use them in a very quick way. Okay, Nox Flamma says, do you have any experience with shin splint type of pain? Absolutely. I have even a personal experience with that. And a physical injury becoming extended through mind-body mechanisms. I have experience with both. In 14 years, I've experienced it either personally or professionally, just all of it. And shin splints are a very, very common manifestation, mind-body manifestation. And what usually needs to happen there is you typically will need to look at either the emotions column to see what was bothering you then, or the doubt column to see what kind of triggering experience happened. Was it from running and not having the confidence that you could do it? So that's the shin splint side of things. With physical injury becoming extended through mind-body mechanisms, this is a very common experience that people have. In fact, I was just talking at the ATNS board meeting we had before the conference. We were having a little spirited debate about what causes mind-body symptoms. And some people were saying, well, it's mostly childhood emotional trauma. Some people were saying it's mostly emotional experience that's bottled up in one form or another, whether from childhood trauma or not. I, of course, agree with those things as possibilities, but I also think that our thinking and how scared we get is a factor. Most people agree with that. But one of the points I made was sometimes people can have these things happen from a physical event that scared the crap out of them. I once was working with a person who had a surfing injury, collapsed lung, And then he started to develop all kinds of mind body symptoms from that because, well, there's multiple reasons, but one of them is it's scary to get injured. It brings up a lot. It can bring up like mortality issues. So, yes, I have a lot of experience with that. And at this point, I feel like I can work with any symptom, understand why it's going the way it's going. The columns lens tells me everything I need to know. And I don't know if you're thinking about joining the groups, Nox Flamma, but I'd love to have you there. I think I can help you really, really well there. Of course, I can help you here. It's a different framework and it's a little bit slower in this way. But another thing about the groups is you don't just learn when you come to talk to me and like at your turn. Every conversation, I'm always bringing it back to the whole picture so that you're getting more and more information every single second. Okay, Healing with Haley says, I'll look into your group. Please do. I would love to help you. All right. All right. Jamie says, my symptoms are constant, Dan, and his mind body. Just to clarify that it does not come and go. I know it doesn't. That's why I said yours was an uptick, not an onset. An uptick means it was always there, but it went up. I'm commenting this in regards to the previous conversation you were having. Yes. So symptoms that come and go, they tend to be more about the emotions column or sometimes power. But when they don't come and go, it's about doubt. And Jamie, you still have a lot of doubt in there, even though we're making really good progress. That's why they don't come and go. All right. Now, the other way that they sometimes don't come and go is at a low level is a power column plateau, but yours are at a high level. This is doubt. All right. So again, the symptoms tell me everything I need to know about what type of columns symptom it is. Patty Flower says my symptoms are constant as well. It's so interesting to me. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the mind-body community or how things have been represented to you guys in the mind-body community, where sometimes people think, well, if they're constant, then it can't be mind-body. Actually, symptoms are much more often constant than they are coming and going. But there's both that happen in the mind-body experience. So don't worry about that at all. And I don't mean don't worry about it in terms of having it, but I mean don't worry about it in terms of your ability to get better. The columns cover all of it. They cover symptoms that are always the same and don't budge. They cover symptoms that come and go. They cover symptom flare-ups. They cover low-level symptoms that are kind of hanging around, which are called power column plateaus, which Nox Flamma is recognizing in the chat here on Instagram. Yeah, I have so much information that I can give you guys. I just wish I could talk to you all about it for hours. And really, that's what group is, because there's really a lot to say and there's insights to get all over the place that will give you a sense that you can get better. Okay. Russell Crane's music says, thank you, Dan. I think I'm experiencing this because I feel like I potentially need to end things, but I'm scared to. I don't want to hurt her. Oh boy. Well, listen, that's a really hard place to be. And I could say lots of different things about it, but one thing that I'll start with is, doesn't this make a lot of sense that you'd be having a lot of symptoms right now? I mean, it just makes a lot of sense. So dig deeper into that. You say you don't want to hurt her. I'm a guy who's always asking why. And when I say that, I don't mean like it doesn't make sense. It makes sense. You're already making logical sense. But what I mean is there's a deeper answer. Why don't you want to hurt her? Would it make you feel bad about who you are? Do you have so much empathy that you would hurt too much for her? I don't know what it is specifically, but we need to look. Keep digging. You're getting some places. What you did right here is a sign of where we can get in emotions column work, is looking deeper at, well, what's happening with this symptom flare up. And all three columns get worked on in these groups or anywhere we go here, including just talking here. Okay, a couple more questions. I'm going to wrap up here. Hillel says, I paid and I'm still paying a crazy price for the fact that he doesn't know how to handle conflict. He bottles up insane rage and can snap in an instant. Yep. Hillel, I think you've been scared of his anger because he hasn't felt safe. I feel like that's true, but I don't really feel bad right now, or even the full price that I've paid and I'm still paying. It feels like more like curiosity about the story, like it isn't quite me and my own pain. Okay, well, that to me, that's a part of power column work. Power column work is to hear that story and really feel it. You're kind of feeling it or learning about it intellectually, but we got to get you to connect to it emotionally. The diarrhea was doing that. but we want to not have to go through that. We want you to get straight to the source. Okay. Beatrice says, my symptoms now are ramping up, preventing sleep because of positioning. Not only am I pushing to exercise, I'm also confronting family issues. Okay, but Beatrice, I mean this encouragingly. None of what you're saying is as central as the fact that you're getting more scared. Fear is the emotional form of doubt. It's the strongest form of doubt. You got to calm yourself down and remind yourself it does not matter what is happening. It's not about the exercise. It's not about the bed you're sleeping on. It's not about the family issues primarily. They're affecting you, but they're not the primary things. The primary things are your level of doubt. I have a line. I say people get better at the speed of doubt. That means if your doubting is huge, your recovery is going to be slower. If your doubt comes down, your recovery gets faster. Doubt is getting you to focus on these other things, and that's actually raising your doubt because you're thinking, well, I don't know if I can get better because of this. Throw all of that out and get back to fighting doubt as the central thing. All right. I hope that is helpful. She did have some follow-up. Let's see. How to manage fear and doubt about moving plus the trauma I am reliving at the same time. Don't mistake those things as really the central cause. They are the cause of the onset of things. They are the cause of the symptoms in terms of why they're here, but they're not the cause of why they continue, and they're not the cause of why they get worse. It's all about fear and doubt. Everything feels unsafe, yet I remain determined. Good. I'm glad you're determined at least. Also need to rest. And how can I help myself now at night? Okay, it's just what I said. Don't buy in to all those other things. Work on doubt. One more thing. PT here made me take off tape I had on the knees, and I understand the reasoning for my mind, yet it makes me hurt more naturally. Okay, so again, Beatrice, throw out the specifics. When it comes to doubt, you just need to recognize doubt is the driving force. Doubt uses the specifics against you. Like, it's interesting. In the emotions column, we got to get more specific. In the power column, we got to get more specific. Sometimes in the doubt column, we've got to get more specific to articulate what is the specific doubt. But generally speaking, we need to recognize doubt as a complete charlatan that we're not going to listen to. We don't want to listen to those details. And that's doubt talking to you. All right? So let's work on that. Patty Flower says, Dan, that's why I have doubt, because most stories I read are from symptoms that come and go. It's so interesting to me because in my experience, there's a ton of symptoms that do not come and go. I would say, in fact, more people I work with have symptoms that do not come and go for a time. They are pretty stubbornly there. Patty, you are not alone. Now, what you're telling me, though, is that we have to do more work getting more stories out there so that people like you know that, this is not atypical. My back pain didn't come and go at all. Now, it is true. I got better fairly fast once I discovered Sarno, but then I had a foot symptom later that didn't come and go at all for a number of years, actually. I was able to reduce it and get better and better and better, but there's all kinds of symptoms that happen. And symptoms that don't budge, very, very common. We'll have to get more stories out there because to me, that's actually even more common than the ones that come and go. Typically speaking, if you think about it, most people don't complain about symptoms that come and go that much because they're like, oh, well, it happens. It's the symptoms that do not come and go that people are like, I can't live this way. So I'm telling you, the majority of people are you, Patty. They're not the other. We got to figure out in the mind, body, field why that messaging is happening the way that it is. Okay. Hillel says, thank you very much, Dan. You are welcome, Hillel. You're doing great work. Beatrice says, thanks, Dan. Okay, got it. Excellent. And Shelby says, Patty, you're not alone. Yep. You're definitely not alone. It is the main thing. Beatrice says, thanks, Dan. You are welcome, Beatrice. Okay. Just two more. I'm going to take Knox Flamma said a couple things. I'm going to finish up on this. Okay. Do you think chronic state of fear and hypervigilance, feeling emotionally/physically unsafe, can cause disordered breathing, chronic cough? Yes, I do. 100%. I think that's actually probably the number one cause of it. In terms of how you've mentioned Sarno and his work largely stated autonomous autonomic nervous system involvement in TMS/mind body. Yes. Listen, our mind, our brains and our bodies and our minds and our bodies, they're one thing. sometimes you can have a purely physical experience that affects your mind. Sometimes you can have a purely mental experience that affects your body. But it's one system. And if the body can do it, the mind can use it. I don't care what it is. So I mean this is encouragingly to everybody, but I sometimes chuckle when people are like, can this happen? And I'm like, anything that can happen physically can happen for emotional reasons. I mean, there's something called broken-hearted syndrome. I think it's Tatsuko broken heart syndrome. I quoted it in my book, but I can't remember the name offhand. This is where people actually die from emotional experience. Now, that's not common at all. You don't have to worry about that. That's usually from very, very unprocessed emotional trauma at a very traumatic time in life. So none of you are in danger of that happening. I'm saying it as an extreme to show you it could be almost anything. Anything that can happen physically. Anything. Blurry eyes, tinnitus, tooth pain, itching, rashes. Absolutely. Okay. Knox Fleming says, what was the name of that mind body PT you mentioned? Charlie Merrill. Merrill. Charlie is fantastic and just a fantastic guy. I loved seeing him at the conference. My symptoms were mainly constant and then became come and go before getting them relatively all the way gone with minor flares when super stressed. Now that's what's common right there. Usually symptoms start mainly constant or fully constant. Then they get to the come and go phase. Then they get all the way down and get minor, and then there's flare-ups. That's the progression every time. I'm glad you said that, actually. You know what? I'm gonna do a podcast episode on this just to show people this is what it's all about. This is the way it is. Okay, Healing with Haley says, so you don't believe scar tissue can cause pain in any case? No, I really don't. There's no evidence of that. There's tons of evidence along in the opposite direction that none of these physical issues really cause pain. I mean, think about a scar that's on the outside of your skin. Does that cause any pain? No. If anything, it's stronger and has less pain. Scar tissue does not cause pain. Now, it doesn't matter what I think. It matters what you think. So let's continue that conversation. But I'm saying that to be encouraging. Bana Bonita, good to see you here. She says, you have to stop caring to the best of your ability. That's part of it. Absolutely. Especially for people who have really, really persistent symptoms in what I call a neuroplastic feedback loop, which we don't have time to get into the distinction, but it's basically just an extreme version of mind-body experience that can be calmed down. It all can be fixed. Okay, Knox Flamma shouts, crushing doubt. I love it. Keep up the good work, Knox Flamma. All right. Shelby, I see you said, yes, mine used to never go. But at least they lower now, Patty. Good. Okay, so it's just what Knox Flamma said here. My symptoms were mainly constant, then became come and go before getting to all the way gone with minor flare-ups when super stressed. Okay? Knox Flamma said, stopping caring really was when I saw truly encouraging improvement. You're right. So stopping caring is one element. I do want to add, there's also getting to a place where you truly believe you're going to get better, which is another form of like stopping caring because you're okay. Whatever it is, you have to feel safer, and you can't just make that up. Okay, guys, we're way over time, but it was great talking to you. I'll be here same time next week. It's Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and I look forward to seeing you then. Okay, take care till then.